And some of the main streets in Vancouver, Georgia Street, Robson Street as well. And, you know, this isn't anything like what we saw during the Olympics when the world really had its eyes on Vancouver. And somebody who was at the Olympics, CP24's Devin Soltendijk, he was in Whistler when Canada actually won the gold medal. Devin, you spent some time in Vancouver during the games. I know you can't see these pictures right now, but if I can describe it to you, the streets are absolutely a mess. There's garbage, there's fire, there's people being knocked down and taken down by police. It just generally looks like a lot of drunken people right now on the streets. Did you see anything like this in Vancouver? And maybe you could, for our viewers, compare. What is downtown Vancouver like compared to Toronto?
Well, Gurdeep, just for full disclosure and perspective, I was actually in Whistler when Team Canada won that gold medal, and literally the streets of Vancouver erupted. It was packed. We were watching on closed screens, but Whistler itself, you couldn't even move to the main thoroughfare in Whistler. I mean, it was red everywhere, a sea of red. I was up on stage, and I know that people had tried to get from one end of Whistler to the other, which usually takes you about maybe 15 minutes to walk. It took some people 2 hours to make it through the crowd. That's how many people were there. They were very, very excited. But I can't see the images you're talking about in Vancouver, but I know all about hockey riots. I grew up in Montreal, and Montreal Canadiens fans, notorious for rioting not only when they win Stanley Cups, but when they lose them as well. Actually, a gentleman is showing me his BlackBerry right now. I'm looking at some pictures. It looks like daylight, some cars burning. Thank you very much. So again, back to my point about the Montreal Canadiens. You know, when the Habs win the Stanley Cup, sometimes there's rioting. We were talking earlier when they had that amazing playoff run last year when they beat the Penguins, when they beat the Washington Capitals. Every time they made it past the playoff series, there was rioting in the street. Cars on fire, policemen had to be deployed on horseback as well as riot police in the streets. So while this is very, very unfortunate and we didn't see it during the Olympics, it's not completely uncommon, especially with NHL hockey, and especially in a country like ours where Canada really is such a big part, hockey is such a big part of people's lives here in Canada. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, whether it's an isolated incident. And, you know, it is important to note, Pradeep, that whenever these kinds of riots happen, that we saw the G20, we saw in Montreal, and we saw back in 1994, it's a few people who do these kinds of things, and unfortunately, the 100,000, 150,000 people that we're seeing in the streets of Vancouver are really caught in the chaos, so to speak, and they're really innocent bystanders. So it's usually a very, very small percentage of people who are rioting here. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, but you know, you have to really think about the hundreds of thousands of people, some young children you imagine who are really just trying to get home, people trying to get their families home. I can imagine if you've ever been to Vancouver, there's very limited means to get out. You've got to take the SkyTrain and you've got to walk back to your car. It can just be a complete nightmare. So the fires that we're seeing, the rioting that we're seeing is not only, you know, it reflects badly on the city of Vancouver, but it's really important to know this is probably just a handful of people that are causing these things.